Eastwood Rotary Club's annual fun supper, and it is my privilege and pleasure tonight to be your chairman. Even though I'm comparatively new to Eastwood Rotary Club, not to Rotary, but to Eastwood Rotary Club. Can I introduce our top table for the evening and our entertainment? So, on my left I have John McElhanger, who is going to deliver the immortal medal. I'll see if the introduction for you to finally turn for that. On my right, Duncan McFadden, who's going to do the toast of the lassies, and sitting beside him, Catherine Stewart, a member of the club, who's going to do the reply. And I'm your chair now, also. We're well protected tonight. We have retired members of not only what used to be the Strathclyde Constabulary, but also a representative from Lothian and Regis Constabulary. So there'll be no trouble. But we're also well represented by the district. We have past president, past president of Eastwood Rotary Club on the stage. We have District Governor Jim Ross and Elaine, past District Governor Drew Hughes and Joan, nice to meet you again. District Governor-elect Jimmy Johnson, past District Governor Catherine, past District Governor John Wardle, past District Governor Alistair Denham. Quite well here. Just interested. And we have the daughter of late past District Governor Roberta. We have daughter, is a member of Western Rotary, Mariella. I'm glad to see that my family have turned out to support me as well. So, without any further ado, I think we will proceed with the evening. I'll say self-introduction. Some he meet and can eat, some he name that want it. But we he meet and we can eat, say, the Lord be thanked. Amen. Honest, sonsy face, great chieftain and a proud race. When them all you take their place, pinch, tripe, will are you worthy a grace, as lang as my earn. The grown entrencher, there you fill, your hurdies like a distant hill. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time of need, and through your pores the dews distill like amber bead. His knife, see rustic labour dicht, and cut up where it is slicht, crushing your growing entrails bricht like honey ditch. And then, oh, what a glorious, warm, reeking, rich. Then horn for horn, they stretch and strive, deal thick behind me, down the drive, till all the wheels swell kite alive are bent like drums, and each good man is like to die. His banquet comes. What is there, Irish, French ragout, or olio with stour sewer, or a fricassee with macas stew with perfect scunner, look down with sneer and scorn for view, and sick of dinner. Fair deal. See him out his tracks, as withered as a speckled rash, his spinel shank a good whiplash, his neve a net, through bloody flood and field to dash. Oh, how unfit. But Matt the rustic, haggis fed, the trembling up resounds this tread, clasping his well eve a blade, he'll make a whistle, and legs and arms in heedful stead, like taps of thistle. Ye poors, for mankind your care, and dishes out our daily fare. Old Scotland wants nae skinking ware that jouts and muggies. If you want an earnest prayer, ye have a haggis. Ladies and gentlemen, the haggis. Can I just check? Have you all had your coffee and tea? Yes. Or is everybody still waiting for tea or coffee? No. Okay. Well, in that case, I think we'll push on. Time is marching ahead. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, our first speaker of the evening, John McIlhaggard, who is the next member of the Eastwood Rotary Club. I'm going to quite a few of the members here. John is a traffic consultant, and he's a former resident of Newton Mearns and now resident in East Kilbride. He's comes from Northern Ireland by birth, and his lovely Northern Irish accent here over the meal takes me back a bit. And he's well known on the Burns as a Burns speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce him to deliver for us tonight the immortal memory. John. It's up on the microphone, I think, John.
Okay. Well, President Colin, ladies and gentlemen, some weeks ago when past District Governor John Waddle phoned me, he asked me if I'd be good enough to speak here this evening at this most important occasion. So I told him, of course I'd be good enough. But it's great to be here at this Rotary Club of Eastwood Burns Supper. And for me, a huge honour to deliver this immortal memory. Now, before I start, I'm going to put my phone safely on the table here. And this follows a horrible experience I had a couple of years ago. I was well into delivering an immortal memory when one of the family phoned me. Now, you might think that having a phone on silent would have been all right, but I can tell you it's awfully hard to concentrate when your sporran's vibrating. Now, when my son was growing up, I spent several years of Wednesday evenings sitting with other parents at the back of a room at the College of Piping in Otago Street, as he and other kids got their lessons on bagpipes. And their teacher then was a man called Seamus McNeill. And whilst giving them instruction about how to perfect double throws on C, or how to avoid making crossing noises, he used to have wonderful little asides while the children were resting from all the blowing. And what I remember was on the appearance that people should adopt when they were listening to a piper playing in Hebrew. And he advised that while allowing your mind to wander over numerous happy subjects, you should always maintain a face that makes it look as if you're enjoying the piping and not wishing it was all over. So I see lots of you are very skilled at listening to the paper. But what do my son's piping lessons have to do with Burns? Well, very little, probably. Because whilst Burns did collect folk songs and tunes, which probably included some pipe tunes, I only mention my son's piping classes in order to ease you gently into this immortal memory speech. Because this is the most important part of any Burns supper, the academic speech, with a prime purpose to inform and enlighten, but also hopefully to entertain. So for those of you who know little or nothing about Burns, and for those of you who know a lot about Burns, my aim this evening is for you to leave here having learned something about him you didn't know before. Now those of you who do know me, and indeed from the introduction, you will realise I am not Scottish. And I was born and brought up on that large island off the west coast of Scotland called Ireland. And I promise not to mention the rugby again. But as George Bernard Shaw put it, I showed my appreciation of my native land in the usual Irish way by getting out of it as soon as I possibly could. Unlike children here who learn a lot about Burns at school and are encouraged to participate in competitions and so on, my school education hardly mentioned him. My memories of English literature were going through lines of Shakespeare. A bit like reading a dictionary, where you can't see any plot, but they explain every word as you go along. And my memories of history classes are spending weeks going through names of kings and queens of England. As a 13 or 14-year-old, my greatest ambition in life was to drop English literature and to drop history. And I did at the earliest opportunity. Therefore, with no school background, in the second half of the 18th century, how can I possibly enlighten and inform you? What do I know of Burns that you don't already know? Well, one thing, let's start with the grace we had earlier. Although attributed to Burns, what we know as the Selkirk Grace was already around for about 100 years, known as the Galloway Grace or the Covenanters' Grace, and was in Lallans, a Roman Scots dialect. But Burns' connection with it was at a dinner given by the Earl of Selkirk, he delivered the grace in standard English. Some have meat and cannot eat, and so on. And I was at university in Belfast before I attended my first Burns supper. It was held at the university's Presbyterian Centre. Okay, I wasn't Presbyterian, but that didn't matter. Because every Tuesday evening in the Presbyterian Centre they had a meal, simple meal, and more significantly it was cheap for students. And the other attraction, of course, being it was always attended by lots of talented young ladies. And so it was one January in the early 70s, traditional Burns supper, haggis and all, was arranged by one of the students who was from Glasgow. I was hooked. I started on a journey wanting to know who Robert Burns was, why he was so loved and respected, not just by Scots, but by people from all over the world. To some people, he might just be a picture on a Scottish £10 note, Clydesdale Bank £10 note. But every year there are Burns suppers, large and small, in countries everywhere. He's cherished and appreciated in groups of vastly different political systems and ideas. I have friends who have been to Burns suppers not only in America and Canada, but in places like Japan and Russia. And indeed, the world's first ever commemorative postage stamp with Robert Burns on it was from the Soviet Union in 1956. Now, sometimes immortal memories start with the story. Robert Burns was born on the 25th of January 1759 in the village of Alloway in Ayrshire. His parents, William Burness and Agnes Brown, were impoverished tenant farmers, and so on, so on, and so on. You've probably heard that. But as an aside, I've often wondered how poor did William Burness have to be able to rent a decent farm and build what was, for its time, a good-sized farmhouse, and pay to have his children privately educated. And the second aside, talking about Burns' influences, In the stage and TV shows, Mrs. Brown's Boys, have you ever noticed that Brendan O'Carroll's character is called Agnes Brown? That's what Burns' mother was called. Anyway, to get back to where I was. Some immortal memories will take a poem and go into minute detail. But for me, this creates two problems. One is that for someone with a brain wired for mathematics, I would find it difficult to come up with an original meaning for some of his poetry. And the second one is perhaps more serious. Trying to recite Burns with a Belfast accent is awful difficult, so it is. Believe me, we sleek at car and timorous beastie. Oh, what a panic's in there, breastie. And that's nothing to the panic that's in your breastie just now, that I might recite more of it. So let me offer you some reasons I feel explain his popularity. Perhaps it's love songs, where in a few words, he not only makes the lassies cry, but can often make grown men cry. Just watch an audience when somebody sings A Fond Kiss or John Anderson, My Joe. Perhaps it's the appreciation of how in Holy Willie's prayer, he's able to expose volumes about a man's hypocrisy. Or maybe it's the humour, like where in a few lines of Tam O'Shanter, he can describe perfectly the wife waiting at home for her husband to come home from the pub, where sits our sulky sullen dame, gathering her brows like a gathering storm, nursing her wrath to keep it warm. But also, he was a pioneer of the Romantic movement, and his works have become a source of inspiration for liberal thinkers. American President Abraham Lincoln was a great Burns fan, and said that Burns' writings on liberty and equality inspired him on the way to winning the American Civil War and working towards abolition of slavery. And although Jeremy Paxman dismissed the poem A Red, Red Rose as sentimental dross, Bob Dylan cites it as the lyric that has had the greatest impact on his life. But then Jeremy Paxman, unlike Dylan, has never won an Oscar, nor the Nobel Prize for Literature. Now I wonder, ladies and gentlemen, are you familiar with the TV programme Only Connect? Where teams of unbelievably knowledgeable and lateral thinking people are given 4 seemingly unconnected clues and have to identify the connection. Let me give you 4 clues. And in this case, it's 4 people's names. Sir Walter Scott, Thomas Campbell, Thomas Graham, Robert Burns. So let me help you a little if you don't recognise them all. I'm presuming you know about Sir Walter Scott, Scottish lawyer, historical novelist, playwright and poet. Thomas Campbell was a Scottish poet, educated at the High School of Glasgow and Glasgow University, and he produced what's normally considered to be a particularly sentimental brand of poetry, along with some stirring patriotic war songs, including, strangely enough for a Scottish poet, Ye Mariners of England. And he is such a famous Scottish poet that he's buried in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. Thomas Graham, born in Glasgow 9 years after Burns died. He was a chemist. He went on to become professor of chemistry at various universities, and he devised Graham's Law, which of course you will all know is about diffusion of gases. And he also invented and developed dialysis, which has been of great use to many people with kidney problems. He's nothing to do with poetry, but I wanted to include him because although I am sure he's not a relative of mine, this is a Graham tartan that I am wearing this evening. And then there's Robert Burns. And the connection, anybody got it? It's to do with statues in George Square in Glasgow. There are 9 other statues, but the night is too short to mention them all in a mere 60-minute speech. But thinking of this statue, how did that statue of Burns come to be in George Square in the first place? So let's go back to 1872. It was 113 years after Burton's birth and 76 years after his death, so perhaps not an obvious date to think of. But it was on the day of the unveiling of Thomas Graham's statue. Remember the tartan, dialysis and so on? There was an editorial comment in the Glasgow Evening Citizen which included the following: so long as Burns, Thomas Campbell and Adam Smith are without suitable commemoration in this city, it cannot be said that subjects are wanting worthy of illustration in bronze or marble. And that article was the proverbial kick up the backside needed to get admirers of Burns into action to organise the erection of a statue. The next day, a commercial traveller called John Brown started a shilling subscription sheet, which was supported by the editor of the Evening Citizen, who ran with the idea of giving it wide publicity and agreed the newspaper would take charge of the amounts of money raised from warehouse, office, workshop and social circle. A later article in the paper stated, "Let the shilling subscription idea be spontaneously acted upon, and we shall soon behold in George Square a statue of the great peasant worthy of his incomparable renown." Within a month, they had a committee, and subscription sheets had been prepared. Within a year, £1,680 had been raised, and with money still coming in, the cost was fixed at £2,000, or 40,000 old shillings. The memorial, which was to be a pedestrian statue in bronze, was to stand in George Square. And local artist and sculptor George Edwin Ewing submitted a design, which was accepted, and he was commissioned to proceed with the work. Now, my research showed that in the 1870s, whilst a craftsman in London could earn up to 5 guineas a week, Scottish miners and police officers would earn about 20 shillings a week, and many people earned a lot less. But 40,000 people each contributed 1 shilling, which is now 5 pence, towards this statue. And you thought crowdfunding was a modern phenomenon. But a clay model was completed in March 1876. It was cast in stucco, and in October 1876 the statue was cast in bronze at the Cox and Sons foundry in Thames Ditton in London. Widely considered to be one of the most perfect they had ever produced. Ewing based Burns' face on the Alexander Naismith 1887 portrait of Burns when he was 28, and the chalk drawing by Archibald Skirving, both of which are now at the Scottish National Portrait Gallery. And the granite pedestal for the statue was made by Meldrum Brothers in Dumfries. The statue of Burns is of Burns standing by a tree stump. His bonnet is in his right hand and a pen in his left hand. Now here's the point that's always interested me, and even after considerable research I have to confess I don't have an answer. Was Burns, like many artists, left-handed? And the only reference I've ever found relates to a statue in Milwaukee, where they claimed that the statue had the pen in the proper right hand. And I don't know if that's the politically correct proper one for the days when left-handed people were forced to write with their right hands, he says with feeling, or if the people of Milwaukee perhaps used something that I've been unable to find. But the inauguration of the statue took place on the 118th anniversary of Burns' birth, 25th of January 1877. Quite a day for Glasgow. A public holiday had been declared, and in spite of the cloud and rain, after all it was January in Glasgow, a procession of more than 10,000 people started out from Glasgow Green and walked round the city to George Square, via Sauchiehall Street, Renfield Street, St Vincent Street. Even then they must have had a funny one-way system. But by the time they reached the square at noon, when the statue was unveiled, it's estimated there were 30,000 people in the crowd. So that's how popular he was. And As is the way in Glasgow, it's understood the celebrations continued well into the evening. There was a banquet in the Crown Halls in Sucky Hall Street, a musical commemoration in the City Halls, literary entertainment in the Trades Hall, and a lecture at Glasgow University, after which students marched to the new statue, gave 3 cheers to the memory of Burns, and concluded by singing Auld Lang Syne. It was about 10 years later the 4 bronze reliefs were added to the plinth, having been designed by James Alexander Ewing, who was the brother of the statue's designer. And these were gifted to the city by the towns of Ayr, Kilmarnock, Paisley, Cumnock and Irvine, all with strong Burns connections. One shows a scene from the Cotter's Saturday Night, one from Tam O'Shanter, one from the Vision, and the 4th one is the inscription of Robert Burns, born in 1759, died 1796. And there are plastic models of these panels on display in Burns College in Alloway. But since then, more statues have been erected to Burns than to any other poet, with at least 15 in Scotland and 22 in North America. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if nothing else, I hope this immortal memory will prompt you to have a closer look at the statue of Robert Burns in George Square. If you stand with your back to the old post office building and look up North Hanover Street, you'll see the tall statue in the middle is Sir Walter Scott. There will be a seagull on its head, and the only reason for that is because the locals haven't devised any way of getting a traffic cone up that high. But just to the left of that, and set into the square a little bit, is the Burns statue. And perhaps also you'll look up some of his works. And then maybe he'll not just be the gentleman who has the picture on the £10 notes. So, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding, raise your glasses and join me in drinking to the immortal memory of Robert Burns.
And I thought you did very well to manage to carry on, and thank you for getting it sorted. I'm now going to call on a member of the Chapman Village, Kit, who has agreed to give us a recitation, and it's the address to the Amcookie. It's Lieutenant Kit.
Thank you, Mr. President Colin, and honoured guests. When I was first told that I was doing this, because I don't volunteer, I was told by Millie I was doing this, I thought I would do Tam O'Shanter. You'll be pleased to hear that I'm not doing Tam O'Shanter. But I heard somebody doing a lovely version of Tam O'Shanter, an abridged version, which I'd like to give to you. When Chapman Village leave the street, remember Tam O'Shanter's mayor. So anyway, that's it. And the other thing I did was, foolishly, I said, I'm going to learn a new poem for tonight. I've never done this before. It might show, but we'll go with it anyway. I know that Colin knows it, so here we go. My son, these maxims make a rule and lump them all together. The rigid righteous is a fool, the rigid wise another. The cleanest corn that e'er was decked may hasten piles of chaff in. So ne'er a fellow creature slept for random fit so daft. O ye who are sae good your sail, sae holy and sae pious, they've not today but mark and tell your neighbours' faults and follies. Whose life is like a good God mill, supplied with stores of water. The heaped hampers ebb and still the clap place clatter. Hear me, ye venerable core, as counsel for poor mortals, that frequent pass douse wisdom's door, for blaked folly's portals. I, for their thoughtless, careless sakes, would hear proponed defences, their doncy tricks, their black mistakes, their failings and mischances. You see your state with theirs compared, and shudder at the niffer, but cast a moment's fair regard. What makes the mighty differ? Discount what scant occasion gave, that purity ye pride in, and Aye, what's that, mair than all the lave, you're better after hiding. Think, when your castigated pulse gies now and then a wallop, what ragings must his veins convulse, that still eternal gallop. Wi' wind and tide fair I your tail, fair on your scud your seaway, but in the teeth of baith they sail, it marks an unco leeway. See social life and glee set down, all joyous and unthinking, till, quite transmogrified, their ground, debauchery and drinking. Or would they stay to calculate the eternal consequences, or your more dreaded hell of state, damnation of expenses? Ye high, exalted, virtuous dames, tied up in godly laces, before ye gave poor frailty names, suppose a change of cases. A well-loved lad, convenient snug, a treacherous inclination, but let me whisper of your love, your aimlings nae temptation. Then gently scan your brother man, still gentler, sister woman, though they may gang a ken and rang, to step aside as human. One point must still be greatly dark, the moving, why they do it, and just as lamely can they mark how far perhaps they rue it. Who made the heart? 'Tis he alone decidedly can try us. He knows each chord, each various tone, each spring, its various bias. Then at the balance let's be mute, we never can adjust it. What's done, we partly may compute, but know not what's resisted. Thank you.
Slight adjustment to the programme, we're going to carry on without a wee interval at this point, because I think extend an interval. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Duncan McFadden, who's going to do the toast to the lassies. One of the disadvantages of being an incomer as it was, I don't know people here very well, but I'll get to know them pretty quick. Duncan was born in Glasgow, it says here, because that's where his mother was at the time. Raised as part of a large family. He's married with a son and daughter, one a doctor and the other a forensic psychologist. They are doubly qualified to know when he needs to go into care. He spent 32 years of completely undistinguished service in the Scottish Police. This is a friend of his, mainly in intelligence, surveillance and protection. What a contradiction. Retired from there and worked with one of the principal airlines. Has spent the last 8 years working as an operations manager in the wholesale clothing industry. Still lives locally and enjoys golf, hill walking and travelling to watch Scottish football and rugby teams. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Duncan McFadden.
Sorry, I really do. Excuse me. Mr. President, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to begin by saying that it is a pleasure and a delight to be here this evening and to be asked to join in your very highly regarded festivities dedicated to the celebrating of the birth of our national bard on the 25th of January, as we heard, 260 years ago. Now I'm certain that none of you were alive at that time, even if John Waddell looks as though he may have been. Your President, Colin called me last week and he asked me if I would come along today and propose the toast to the lassies. Colin, I must thank you most sincerely for introducing me today. I, ladies and gentlemen, have enjoyed a number of introductions at various functions, and I can say without fear of contradiction that your introduction of me tonight, Colin, was the most recent. I would ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to look at Colin and see a man completely unspoilt by failure. When we met during the week up at his house in Crookford, I said to him, Colin, you've travelled the world. You're a smart, intelligent and thoughtful man. Tell me, what's the capital of France? And without hesitation, he said, F. You will all see that Colin has the furniture look. His chest has slipped over his drawers. And can I just say, I want to thank Colin for his hospitality this evening. If I had known it was going to be so bounteous, I would have brought the car. Anyway, in fact, when I met Colin at his house, we were getting on terrifically well. I really thought we were doing well. And I reckoned that after 2 hours he was going to invite me in. Do you know that after Colin left home, he went into a flat to live on his own? On the very first Saturday morning of the first weekend, he walked into the local greengrocer's and he said to the lady behind the counter, tell me, can I have one rasher of bacon? Can I have one sausage? Can I have one potato scone? Can I have one roll and one egg, please? And the lady behind the counter looked at him and said to him, you live alone, son, don't you? He said, yes, how did you know? She said, because you're ugly. Earlier on this evening, I was speaking to his lovely wife Jane in the hostility suite outside. And I said to her, Jane, do you know, you're looking absolutely fabulous in spite of being married to Colin. I asked her how she kept her youth, and she said, oh, that's easy, I pay him. She did, however, share with me that the only way to put a sparkle in Colin's eyes is to shine a torch in his ear. Now, I must confess to being rather nervous about today, particularly as I am to toast these beautiful lassies who are here this evening. I do, however, feel justly qualified in being asked to undertake this impossible task. I was born the youngest of 7 children, and I was the only boy. I suspect some of the ladies present here this evening will reckon that I was probably spoiled as a child. Absolutely nothing could be further from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. The opportunity presented today was just too much for me to pass up. Now, I'm happy to share with you that in the company this evening we have Joyce and John Waddle, who last Friday on the 1st of February shared their 40th wedding anniversary. Catherine and her husband Jim, Catherine will respond very shortly to this toast, they had their 40th wedding anniversary on Saturday the 2nd of February. My wife Karen, who's with us this evening, she and I will share our 40th wedding anniversary come the 21st of April. And I can assure you, this is the first time in 40 years that I've been able to speak uninterrupted. As a boy with all those sisters, life was tough. Can you imagine, gentlemen? None of the hand-me-downs fitted. I had flowery wallpaper in my bedroom until I was 14. One particularly difficult circumstance was when I turned up at school wearing the same dress as my teacher. I don't know, Colin, and I know you worked in education, but I really don't know who was more embarrassed, me or him. My sisters used to encourage me to ask strangers for sweeties. When I returned with none, they would go back and say, ask if they get any in the car. I was the only 8-year-old boy in Glasgow who was an expert with a twin-tub washing machine and a mangle. However, life would change. I left school with an O-level in guilt and a certificate of competence in home sewing. I did a few jobs and eventually I joined the police service. Now, unlike today, that, I can assure you, was not a difficult process. I was in town one day and I went into the police recruiting office. I found a village idiot cleverly disguised as a chief inspector. I commented that I had half a mind to join the police and he said, that's all you need, son. So I asked if I could go directly into the CID. Glasgow's answer to the pop group Bananarama. They're yellow, thick-skinned and they hang around in bunches. No came the answer. I said, well look, can I go straight into the traffic department then? You know, the guys with the white hats and the big fancy cars, generally known nowadays as the Taliban. No, son, came the answer. I asked, well, why not? And this village idiot said to me, Well, I'm looking at your application form and I see at the time of your birth your parents were already married. Say there are no traffic officers here tonight. As you know, I'm not that. Over a period of years, I was fortunate enough to gain service in all the great areas of this fine city of Glasgow. Places where a Rottweiler is an exotic pet and a cat's a tourist. Places where theft by housebreaking is simply the relocation of previously stolen property from one premises to another. Type of place where a man answers the door and says, "Meet my mother and my sister," and there's only one woman standing there. As I progressed in service, I spent time both in uniform and in CID, and I worked in many different inquiries. Now, that involved attending the High Court as a witness, and it's amazing how our brethren in the East, the legal practitioners there, known as the advocates at the bar, have a different way of looking at things than we do. And it's all brought to us by language. Now, I appreciate in Edinburgh, breathing is very important, whereas here in Glasgow it's just a happy pastime. However, if you listen to the language, I remember being at the High Court one day, and there was a lady giving evidence, and she said to the Crown agent who was prosecuting, she said, "Do you know, I was in the house and I heard the chap at the door, and his big ship on the bench sat forward and said, 'And did you know this fellow?' Later on in her evidence she said, 'You know, I received a terrible beating, an awful beating.' And he said to her, 'Was this a rare occurrence?' She said, 'Well, I didn't enjoy it.'" It's all in the art of language, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if there are any of the legal profession in here tonight, but I hope not. Funnily enough, last month I was going to a function in Edinburgh, and I went into a bar for a quick beer beforehand. Now, I had to be quick because it was happy minute in the pub. I met a fellow, or a bloke as we would say, and I said to him, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a solicitor." I said, "Oh, really? Honest?" He said, No, I'm an ordinary solicitor." Spare a thought for them, ladies and gentlemen, when you consider today in the sporting world, where golfers are earning millions of pounds in tournaments, where tennis players are winning double figures in millions, and where football players costing almost £200 million each and wanting £500,000 per week net of tax each year, I reckon it would take even the most hard-working solicitor an awfully long time to embezzle that kind of money. But not everything is always as it seems. I was in town last week attending a function at the Hilton, a function I've gone to for the last 3 years, and as I went in the front door, there was a blind chap sitting at the front door selling matches. So I thought, well, that's unfortunate. So I put £2 in his box, and I walked in the door, and he said, "Excuse me." I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you the chap that's been coming here for the last few years, and every time you go past, you put £2 in the box, but you never take any of my matches?" I said, "Yes, that's right, that's me." He said, "Well, they've gone up." Likewise, recently I was in Argyle Street, and I'm walking along the road, and as you know, I think they've been trying to clamp down on begging in Glasgow and other cities, but there was a chap sitting there who looked really downbeaten and desolate. He was clearly down in his luck, and he had a big sign round his neck saying, "Falklands Veteran." And I thought, goodness me, now there's a man who's fought for his country, given dedicated service to his country, and here he is now on the lowest spoke of fortune's wheel. I put £10 in his cup, and he looked up at me and he said, "Muchas gracias." Gentlemen, we may laugh a little with the lasses, preferably with them rather than at them. And in these modern days of aggressive equalitarianism, I think it's lovely to have a gathering such as this, where lads and lasses can share each other's company and happiness without having to upstage one another or score points. And I know that Catherine Stewart is listening to that point. After all, now allow me to tell you, Catherine, after all, as a youngster I was constantly reminded that when God made man, she was only joking. No man enjoyed more the company and fellowship of females than our national bard Robert Burns, but no one was more appreciative of the gifts and beauties of the lassies. It was a lassie, of course, who first inspired Robert Burns to commit his first sin, the sin of verse. When working in the fields, he met Nellie Fitzpatrick, and was so taken with her charms, he wrote, "Oh, once I loved a bonny lass, and I love her still. And whilst that virtue warms my breast, I'll love my handsome Nell." From then on, Robert Burns continually wooed the lassies and wrote prolifically about them. He recognised in lassies both strength and virtue, and far from being disrespectful of them, he was their greatest admirer and defender. Just listen to a few lines. "Fair maid, they need not take the hint, nor idle texts pursue. 'Twas guilty sinners that he meant, not angels such as you." Think of his travels in Edinburgh, and possibly the greatest love affair that never really was. He wrote to Clorinda, "A fond kiss and then we sever, a farewell and then forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Had we never loved so kindly, had we never loved so blindly, never met or never parted, we had ne'er been broken-hearted." How often do we sing that beautiful song, yet not really think about what is being said? This I wonder. In relation to the lassies, Burns in his behaviour was typical of men of his time, and perhaps of ours if you think about it. Yet he was well ahead of his time in terms of his attitude towards women. Whilst he wooed many lassies, he genuinely loved them all, and unlike these brash, selfish modern times, he was acutely aware of his responsibilities to all of his lassies, and especially his children. He had 12 children in all, 9 out of wedlock, but he steadfastly believed that children were as much his responsibility as they were that of their mother. Bearing in mind the place in society held by lassies in the late 18th century, who else would write, "Welcome to a bastard Wayne"? Listen to a few of the words. "Welcome, my bonny sweet wee dochter, though ye come here a wee unsought for, and though you're coming I hae fought for both kirk and queer, yet by my faith you're no unwrought for, that I shall swear. And if thou be what I would hae thee, and tak the counsel I shall gie thee, I'll never rue my trouble wi' thee, the cost nor shame of it, but be a loving father to thee, and brag the name of it." If only all parents cared like that today, what a better place the world would be. But you know, it's amazing what we can learn from children. As you know, Colin was involved in education. He was the deputy head at the school and very much involved in the social work aspect of it. And many teachers can relate stories, and let me share 2 with you. A friend who was a primary teacher asked her class to write in their notebooks an item relating to their holiday. She read many amusing entries, but can you imagine parents' night having read in one little girl's jotter that the wee girl was so excited the night before they went on holiday, she went downstairs and found Mummy and Daddy practicing sunbathing in front of the fire. And the teacher, who had a little time to pass, decided to test her class by describing an object and asking the children to identify it. She turned her back in the class and she said, "It's round and it's red and you can eat it." Wee Johnny's hand went straight up in the air and she thinks, "Oh, I know what wee Johnny's like." So I'll ask Mary. And Mary said, "Please miss, it's an apple." She said, "No, Mary, it's actually a plum. But that's good, it shows you're thinking. I'll do it for you again." She turned her back and she said, "It's orange and it's round and you can eat it." Johnny's hand straight up in the air. "No, I'm not taking Johnny." "Thomas, please miss, it's an orange." She said, "No, it's not an orange, it's a peach. But that's good, it shows you're thinking. Would one of you children like to do that for me?" Johnny's hand went straight up in the air. No one else volunteered, and against their better judgment, she said, "Okay, Johnny." So Johnny went out to the front of the class and he turned his back and he bent over a little and he said, Please, miss. It's about an inch and a half long. It's thin, and you take it between your finger and thumb. She said, "Oh, Johnny." He said, "No, miss, it's a match, but it shows you're thinking." You may, of course, be aware that Catherine and her husband Jim were fortunate enough to travel to Florida again last year in the summer. Now, Catherine always wants to look her best, so she decided to go to the doctor and have herself a full checkup before they went away. And of course she had to go private because being involved in money laundering, investigating money laundering and things like that, she was able to afford this. So she went to the doctor, she had her complete health check, and she arrived home a little later, absolutely beaming. And Jim said to her, "What are you so happy about?" She said, "Well, I had an examination and the doctor noted I have the soft silky skin of an 18-year-old, the bright sparkling eyes of a 20-year-old, and the lithe, firm thighs of a 22-year-old. So Jim asked her, "What did he say about your 60-year-old bum?" She said, "No, darling, he didn't ask about you." In thinking of the lasses, Burns wrote many beautiful love songs, mainly because he believed what he wrote. Probably most famous and best known of all, as John alluded to, is "My love's like a red, red rose. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. Oh, I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run." Think of the feelings, gentlemen, that must have been coursing through Burns' body when he wrote those beautiful words. How many of us have wanted to say something special at some time, some expression of keen emotion and pure feeling, but couldn't find the words? Burns succeeds again and again, but is inspired to this by the attraction and wonderment of the lasses. By night, by day, afield at hay, the thoughts of thee my breast inflame, and I muse and sing thy name. I only live to love thee. Though I were doomed to wander on, beyond the sea, beyond the sun, till my last weary sand was run, till then, and then I love thee. Gentlemen, only the lasses can inspire such thoughts and feelings. You only have to look around tonight to see that our company is both graced and blessed by the presence of so many wonderful lasses, and we should be eternally grateful to them. Where, I ask you, would we be without them? Robert Burns both knew and understood lasses. He wrote, "The woman's minds like winter winds may shift and turn and all that. The noblest breast adores them maist, a consequence I draw that." However, I feel that in conclusion, we men, and big men, must agree that Burns summed up the lasses perfectly when he wrote, "Old nature swears the lovely dears, her noblest work she classes o. Her prentice hand she tried on man, and then she made the lasses o." Mr. President and gentlemen, it is now my honour and privilege to ask you to rise and to join with me in a toast, which is the lasses.
The lasses.
First contribution to the evening, I now call on the chaplain Billies to give us musical numbers.
Thank you very much. Is that switched on? Oh, it is now. Hello. Funnily enough, most of the words have been said in that marvellous toast to the lassies. So the first one we're going to do, once the guys behind me are ready, is Clean Throw the Ashes off. Now, we're used to playing in pubs, so you've been an awfully good audience tonight and been awfully careful, but if you want to talk, stamp your feet, or just look at reaches or whatever, just join in with us if you can. If you know the chorus, please join in. And this is totally important. There's naught but care on every hand, in every hour that passes, but signifies the life of man, and worthy for the lasses. I am green, grow the rashes, I green, grow the rashes, the sweetest herb that e'er I spent was spent among the lasses. The worldly race, the riches chase, and riches still they fly them. And when at last they catch them fast, their hearts can ne'er enjoy them. I am green, grow the rushes, I green, grow the rushes, the sweetest herb that e'er I spent among the lasses. But he and canny o'er him, I care good my dear, and worldly cares and worldly men, they all pay tassel dear. I am green, grow the rashes, I green, grow the rashes, the sweetest herb that I spent among the lasses. But he doubts, he sneered this, he'll know a senseless asses. The wisest man in the world there saw, he daily learned the lasses. I am green, grow the rashes, I green, grow the rashes, the sweetest herb that I spent among the lasses. All nature's with her lovely deeds, her noblest work she classes. Apprentice hand she tried of man, and then she made the lasses. I am green, grow the rashes, I green, grow the rashes, the sweetest herb that e'er was spent among the lasses. In both the immortal memory and in the toast to the lassies is the ever popular A-fond kiss, sometimes known as parting song to Clorinda, because in their correspondence he was known as Sylvander to her Clorinda. It's a sort of clandestine thing, but she eventually fell out with him, partly because he got her servant maid pregnant. I couldn't see the problem, but there you go, that's it. So she joined her husband in Jamaica. There's another joke to that I won't do. warring sighs and groans I'll wage me. Who shall say that fortune grieves him while the star of hope she meets him? Me may cheerful twinkle I see. Dark despair around me night me. I'll never lay my partial fancy. Nothing could resist my Nancy, but to see her is still love her and love forever. And we never loved so kindly, and we never loved so manly, never met and never parted. We had never been broken-hearted. Here we will love first and fairest. Here we will love best and dearest. Mine be you, a joy and pleasure, peace, enjoyment, love and pleasure. Take a kiss and then we sever. Make them will last forever. Keep in health from tears I'll bless thee. Warring sighs and groans I'll wait thee.
We're about to continue the proceedings. I'm sure you'll agree with me, we've been ably entertained so far for the super night so far, and it now gives me great pleasure to introduce Catherine Stewart, who's going to do the fives as opposed to Latin. Now, as you know, we work for Catherine because she's been in the club since I joined in. In fact, she's Catherine is in fact a past district governor, and she was first lady district governor of Scotland. So, born in Paisley, went to Paisley Grammar School. I went to Paisley shoot through my bank exams. Anyway, and you went to Paisley Grammar School with Fred the Shred. I don't understand this. Similarities end there, she says. She's been in banking for 40 plus years, currently head of regulatory management at a Clydesdale bank, married to Jim. Just two daughters for 40 years. And his two daughters, Kirsty and Shona. I've heard Catherine speak before, she's an excellent absolute speaker, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Catherine to reply to the toast to the last. Catherine.
Thank you, President Colin, ladies and gentlemen. I must apologise, I have a really bad cold, so I will try not to cough my way through all of this evening. That's my first apology. My second apology is actually for turning up, because when Anne Maguire and Steve Malloy heard that I had been ill, Steve had offered to stand in for me. And when I arrived this evening, he was particularly disappointed because he had to take his sparkly dress off and change back into his normal clothes. So that's my second apology. But I'm sure Steve will dress up for an interview later if they're still interested. Firstly, can I thank Duncan for his lovely toast to the lassies. You know, when I was told that Duncan was going to do the toast to the lassies, I was told that he was suave, sophisticated, handsome, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to lift my game. And then I got here and I saw that he'd either dressed down, was having an off day, or Karine had been out of the house when he was getting dressed to come out. As you all know, February is the month of love, a time for Valentine's Day and for remembering love and emphasising the importance of love in our lives. And as John alluded to earlier, it's fitting that we celebrate this tonight, celebrating Robert Burns, who is also regarded as a pioneer of the romantic movement. And ladies, how blessed are we that we celebrate it with such a handsome bunch of men this evening. Now, as has been I didn't laugh, gentlemen, they laughed. Now, as has been mentioned a few times this evening, you know, John and Joyce and Jim and I last week celebrated 84 years of marriage between us, and Duncan and Karine are shortly sharing their 40th. I mean, how lucky can 3 men get? So I thought it might be fitting to share with you the secrets of a long and happy marriage. It was very difficult to find any of it between the two of us that had one, but I'll do my best. Anyway, I spoke to Joyce and she said she loves being married because it was great to find someone that she could annoy every day for the rest of her life. And Joy said the secret was that they go to a nice restaurant twice a week, they enjoy good food, nice wine and good company. He goes on Tuesdays and she goes on Thursdays. And they always hold hands when they go out. She thinks it's romantic, but he knows it's economic, because if he lets go, she shops. I also overheard John asking Jim the secret of a happy marriage, and Jim said, separate beds, hers is in London, mine is in Renfrew. And he doesn't actually think I'm the best housewife, so for our anniversary last week, he asked me where I would like to go, and I said somewhere I haven't been for a long time, so he took me into the kitchen. and we rarely fight. The last time was when I asked him the other night what was on the telly, and he said, dust. But, you know, just before we got married, the minister said to Jim, took him to the side and he said, the secret of a long and happy marriage is just to say, just buy it. Boy, was Jim raging when he heard that I had overheard that one. But you know, my advice to you men after all this time is, love us, miss the game for us, listen to us, take us for nice meals, buy us presents, especially jewellery. Ladies, it's much easier for you. Turn up naked, bring beer. Now, when Rabbie wrote We Sleek It Cúrin Timris Beastie, was it really about a mouse, or was it about how his fellow masons, and you all know who you are, felt going home after another late night at the lodge? Because I thought it went more like, We sleek it cúrin timris beastie, oh what a panic's in now priestie, oh why on earth did I get wasted, there's going to be trouble. Now, as you know, one of our past presidents, Ronnie Munn, is a great fan of golf. And one day he was out on the golf course with his partner, and he was about to play off the 11th tee when a funeral cortege passed. His partner stopped, bowed his head, and doffed his cap as it passed. Ronnie said, that was such a lovely thing to do. It's so good to see there is still some respect in this world. His partner said, it's only right, we were married for 25 years. Now, as I said, Ronnie likes golf, and there was a time when Ronnie and Margaret played golf together. One day they were out for their weekly round and enjoying a great day and a great play. and on the 9th green, Margaret suddenly screamed in agony and collapsed. "Oh no," says Ronnie, "you're having a heart attack." Margaret's screaming, "Help me, Ronnie, help me, find a doctor." So Ronnie runs off as fast as he can, and then he quickly returns, picks up his putter, lines up his putt, and Margaret lifts her head and glares at him. "I'm dying over here and you're putting." Ronnie says, "Don't worry, I found a doctor on the 2nd hole and he's coming to help." "Well, how long will that take?" says Margaret. "No time at all," says Ronnie, practising his stroke. "Everybody's agreed to let him play through." Now, before internet dating, I'm sure a lot of you will remember this, it used to be that you put a personal ad in the newspaper. So Peter Daniels, being a young man and looking for love, thought he would try and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Motherwell were in the final of the Scottish Cup, so he decided to put an ad in the paper saying, "I'll marry a woman with 2 tickets to the game. Must include photograph of tickets." Now, do you remember it's a changed world now since the Me Too movement, but do you remember, ladies, when men used to be like real Jack the Lads and they used to say, "Why buy the cow when you get milk for free?" Well, nowadays things have changed. 80% of women are against marriage because they've realised it's not worth buying the entire pig just for a wee sausage. which reminds me, what's 6 inches long, 2 inches wide and drives women crazy? Money, of course. Now, last week when we were celebrating our anniversary, I recall that Anne and Willie the Whippet Maguire, he must have been feeling a bit romantic because he said to Anne, "When I first met you, I wanted to make love to you really badly." To which Anne responded, "Congratulations, you succeeded." Now, take you back to the early 60s. In the early 60s, Colin and Jane were going on a date. Colin went to pick Jane up and her father answered the door. He asked what they were planning to do on the date, and Colin politely responded, "We'll probably just go for a burger or to see a movie." And Jane's father said, "Why don't you just go out and screw?" Colin said, "Excuse me, sir?" And Jane's father said, "I hear that all the kids are doing it." And she said, "And you know, Jane, she really loves to screw. She would do it all night if we let her." 20 minutes later, well, Jane came down and they went out. She said she was ready to go. 20 minutes later, a thoroughly dishevelled Jane rushes back into the house, slams the door and screams at her father, "Dad, the twist! It's called the twist!" One of my other friends, Judy, she was out meeting her friend Joyce for coffee, and the 2 of them started talking about who they were dating. Joyce said she wasn't seeing anyone special, but Judy said she was quite excited by someone she'd been seeing for about a month called George. She said the previous night they'd gone out to dinner and he said the 4 little words she'd always wanted to hear. And Joyce said, "Will you marry me?" And Judy said, "No, put your money away." Now, last week I was chatting to one of our older members who'd been at the doctor's to get a checkup. A few days later, the doctor saw him walking down the street with a gorgeous young woman on his arm. Now, I was going to say this was Alistair Denham, but I'm not sure if he would hear me. So, just imagine that it might be somebody like Alistair Denham. Anyway, a couple of days later, the doctor spoke to him and said, "You're doing great, aren't you?" And Alistair said, "Just doing what you said, doctor. Get a hot mama and be cheerful. And the doctor said, I didn't say that, I said you've got a heart murmur. Now, you know, those of you who are in our club will know that this is a common mistake that happens because nobody hears what they've ordered for their dinner or indeed remembers what they've ordered for their dinner. So that was quite fitting. Anyway, I've always said that women are much cleverer than men. And last week I was visiting an old folks' home when I heard an old woman saying to an old man, I bet I can guess your age. The old man said, go on then. And she said, well, drop your pants and show me your bum. So he did, and she said, you're 84. And he said, that's amazing, how did you know that? And she said, you told me yesterday. Now, last week, Willie the Whippet Maguire and the lovely Anne went to the doctors for their checkups. Willie went in first and the doctor said, how are you doing? And Willie said, pretty good. I'm eating well and I'm still in control of my bladder and my bowels. In fact, he said, when I get up in the night to pee, the good Lord turns the light on for me. Anne went in next and when the doc asked how she was doing, she said, great. I've got lots of energy and no pain. And the doctor said, well, that's really good that you're both doing well. But he says, tell me, he said, Willie said when he gets up to pee, the good Lord turns the light on for him. And I said, the swine, he's been peeing in the fridge again. Now, not long after that, our members of our club are of a certain age, so they all kind of at the doctors fairly regularly. So not long after that, Steve went to the doctors and he said that he was a bit concerned that he wasn't able to do all the things that he used to. And when the examination was over, he said to the doctor, now doctor, I can take it. Tell me in plain English what's wrong with me. The doctor said, you're lazy. He said, okay, says Steve, can you now tell me the medical terms so that I can help better? Now, not many of you know this, but George Brunton used to be a captain in the army. And he was posted once to a remote desert spot. And on inspection, he noticed there was a camel tied up outside the barracks. So he said to the soldier, there are 250 men here, and sometimes, he said to the soldier, sorry, why is the camel tied up outside the barracks? And the soldier said, well, there are 250 men here, and no women, and sometimes the men get urges. Now, a month later, George felt himself a little urge. So he put the ladder up behind the camel, dropped his trousers and had sex with it. And he asked the soldier, is that how the men do it? And the soldier said, no sir, they usually just ride it to the brothel. Now, John also went to the doctors for a routine check-up and everything seemed fine. And the doctor said, how are you? And John said, not bad at all, to be honest. But Joyce isn't that interested in sex anymore. So he said, I usually just cruise around, and last week I picked up and had sex with at least 3 girls, and none of them were over 30 years old. The doctor said, my God, John, I hope you at least took precautions at your age. And John said, of course I did. I'm not senile yet, I gave them a false name. I must confess that for all his faults, I can't think anything but good of a lad who writes this. Husband, husband, cease your strife, no longer idly rave, sir. Though I am your wedded wife, yet I am not your slave, sir. And marriage is all about a partnership. And I think we're so lucky and fortunate to have the men that we have in our lives, whether they're husbands, partners, brothers, fathers. So lassies, if you wouldn't mind being upstanding and joining me, here's a toast to our lads in the Bard's own words. Get speed and further to you, Johnny, get health, hail horns and weather bonny. The lads. The lads. The lads. Thank you.
Colin Chapman Village to give the students. Yes, that's it. Chapman Village, please. A big hand, please, for the.
Robin got a chorus, so everybody knows it. Please join in. If you didn't make up the words, we sometimes do. There was a lad was born in Tyre, but on the day upon the square, unto his family were her royal, it be say nice wee Robin. Almost never wrote this. Let's see if we can find the actual song. This is the other side of the coast tree of the Ailsa Cree. He, when he was an exciseman, was in the Solway Firth. So it's a wee bit poetic licence, but it's about the time that he went in it. It's called Smugglers. And it's got a chorus. And you'll go have a clue it probably if you have. Join in the hills. Our boat rides up the Ailsa Cree, and away and roll away. The 13 men in Hazel Hall, take back your bub and pray. And those 30 horse in Hazel Hall, with a rotor on their knee. Or sit this neck upon set of tunes. Is the piper still here? Oh, good, I do need to apologise. It's a couple of pipe tunes. But, first one is Hector the Hero, followed with Santa Kuwait, finishing off with a shocking farewell. I didn't join in the chorus this night. me, so I'm going to man's a man for all that. With the Guinness. No, I've got a drinking problem, I'm quite good at it. If there's someone is quality, and dignity, and honor, and mercy, we pass him by, we down in earth for all that, and all that, the toils and skill, and all that, the rank is one, the guineas and the man without for all that, what gold unnamely, where we lie, we're all in grey, and all that, it moves the silks and lays their wine, a man for all that, all that, and all that, that takes the deeds, and all that, the honest man, though mercy poor, is king of men for all that. You see young Ducky, all of law, for struts and stairs and all that. The ones and bushes as his word, he's brought a tune of all that, and all that, his river, star and all that. A man, oh, independent mind, he looks and laughs at all that. A prince and mag, a belted knight, a marvellous youth and all that. And honest man's a his mind, get paid in money, all that, all that, and all that, the dignities and all that, the tender sense and pride, oh, a higher rank and all that, and let us pray a common may, a common will for all that, and man the world all shall men agree for all that, and all that, it's common yet for all that, and man, the world all shall brotherly for all that.
Everyone, I could settle this all night, but the time is rapidly coming to an end of our evening and that together, and I'd like to call on Peter Daniels, our Vice President, to give the vote of thanks. Peter.
Thanks, Colin. This is on? Yeah, okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope everybody's had a good time, a very enjoyable evening tonight. I think it's been great. I won't keep you long, but there are a number of people I have to thank. First of all, William Wood Golf Club for allowing us to have our annual lunch supper here tonight. It's an excellent venue, and the catering staff particularly for a very nice meal indeed. The Piper who has left, Piper Scott Ratcliffe, for welcoming us in when we arrived, and for piping in the haggis. I thought the speakers were excellent tonight, starting with John McElhager for the immortal memory, Now, John is a former president of this club, and we're actually used to John he's quite a funny guy, John, and this is the first time that I've heard him do an immortal memory, which is really quite a serious speech, but I thought he carried it off really well. Duncan Fadgen, a retired police officer, who John Wardle told me that he served with Duncan in Castlemilk 25 years ago, but that since then their paths have never crossed in the police force. It's quite incredible lengths people will go to get away from Wardle. So Duncan, that was great. Thanks so much. Catherine, another former president of the club. And the first thing I would say, Catherine, is that Anne was already a Motherwell supporter before I met her. And it was actually a condition of her getting married that she maintained and she stayed as a Motherwell supporter. Catherine, it was just brilliant, your talk. I thought it was funny, it was apt, it was just right for the occasion. Thanks so much indeed. There's a hidden talent there. Maybe it should stay hidden, I don't know. Can I thank the Chaplain Billies for again providing the musical entertainment at the club. Quite amazing that Colin has known them for over 30 years. That's Maggie, John, Billy, and Judy said for 30 years. Colin, you've known them for a lot longer than that. Yeah, I won't go there. Right. Thanks to yourself, Colin, as president of the club, not only for your address to the haggis, but also for presiding over tonight's event, which you did with your usual competent, professional manner. But the biggest thanks of all, I think, should go to another former president of the club, Anne Maguire, for organising tonight's Burn Supper. She is truly an organiser extraordinaire. Fresh from her triumph at the magazine night, she's carried it off again. It's a hard job organising the tables, preparing the programme, liaising with the club, with the golf club. So well done, Anne. Just a very, very good night indeed. Finally, thanks to everybody for attending and supporting Eastwood Rotary Club tonight. There are 70 people here tonight, which is a huge increase in last year's attendance at this event. So, and it's been really, really excellent. And without your support, we wouldn't have had this enjoyable evening tonight. So that's enough for me. Time's getting on. We've got one last thing to do, which President Colin will do, and a safe journey home after that happens. Thank you.
Just before we all rise together and sing the traditional Old Lang Syne, which the band was very kindly agreed to play for us, so we'll all get in tune. Hopefully the right tune. Is it DLG? Anyway, before that, I should like to give you the final toast of the evening, which is Rotary, the world over, service above self. Rotary, the world over, service above self. Aye.